In 1997, one running back did something only two men in history had ever done. He ran for 2,000 yards. He was named Most Valuable Player. He was, by acclaim, the best in football. 18 months later, he quit by fax. No press conference, no farewell tour. A single sheet of paper sent to a newspaper in Kansas the day before training camp. And the greatest show the Detroit Lions ever put on the field simply walked away, healthy, in his prime, 1,000 yards from immortality. This is how the peak became the end. Let's start on the day the party ended, December 26, 1996. The Lions had just finished 5-11. Owner William Clay Ford fired head coach Wayne Fontes and told the room he'd settle for nothing less than a Super Bowl. Fontes was a player's coach, warm, forgiving, quick with a joke and a hug. He was also the winningest coach in franchise history, and the losingest. In 9 years, he'd won exactly one playoff game. Detroit cheered the firing. The papers wanted a disciplinarian. The fans wanted someone serious. One man didn't cheer. Barry Sanders was close to Fontes, and later wrote that he thought Fontes deserved another chance. But here's the detail almost nobody knew at the time. According to Sanders' own father, Barry thought about retiring right then, before the new coach had run a single practice. Hold on to that. The new coach arrived January 13, 1997. Bobby Ross. 5 years, $7.5 million, total control of the roster. He'd just taken San Diego to a Super Bowl, and he was everything Fontes was not. "I want perfect practices," Ross said. "Perfect practices make for perfect games." He brought curfews, weight requirements, longer, harder practices. He tore down what players had treated like a country club, and some of them resented him for it. The philosophy was blunt. Build a tougher, more physical team, one that didn't live or die on Barry Sanders. In April, the Lions used the 5th overall pick on cornerback Bryant Westbrook, a defense-first choice for a defense-first coach. On paper, the roster had teeth. Sanders in the backfield, Herman Moore and Johnny Morton at receiver. What it didn't have was a settled quarterback. Scott Mitchell had the job, and the Silverdome booed him in nearly every home game he ever played. But the biggest change was one small, tactical decision. For the first time in his professional career, Ross put a full-time fullback in front of Barry Sanders. It nearly wrecked everything. Because through 2 games, Barry Sanders looked broken. Week 1, a win over Atlanta. Week 2, a home loss to Tampa Bay in which the best runner alive gained 20 yards. 20, the lowest total of his entire career. Ross abandoned the run in the second half, and Sanders barely touched the ball. 2 games in, he had 53 rushing yards, and the whispers started. Had this rigid new system finally broken Barry Sanders? His fullback, Corey Schlesinger, said it plainly years later. The staff didn't understand how to run Barry. You couldn't hand it to him 3 straight times and expect 3 good plays. You fed him over and over and let the chaos do the rest. Sanders himself told teammates one word: frustrating. So they started feeding him. And what happened next has never been matched. 14 straight games of 100 rushing yards or more, an NFL record that still stands. But, and this is the strange part, the team around him kept losing. A blowout of Chicago, a loss at New Orleans, a statement win over Green Bay, then Buffalo, the Giants in overtime, Green Bay again, a beating in Washington. By late November, Barry Sanders was having the greatest season a running back had ever had, and the Detroit Lions were 4-6. The 2,000-yard chase and the playoff chase had become the same story. Miss one, and you'd miss both. Then the surge. Minnesota buried 38-15. Indianapolis, where Sanders went for 216 yards and set the record for 10 straight 100-yard games. Chicago on Thanksgiving, 55-20, 3 more touchdowns, and passed Eric Dickerson into second on the all-time list. A shootout loss in Miami, then a white-knuckle win at Minnesota, which set up everything. The final Sunday, Win, and you're in. December 21st, the New York Jets at the Silverdome. Both teams needed the win to reach the playoffs. Sanders needed 131 yards to reach 2,000. And at halftime, the Jets had him stuffed. 20 yards. Then the dam broke. A 47-yard burst. A touchdown. Chunk after chunk, the crowd counting down the yards with him, until late in the fourth quarter, on a short run up the middle, Barry Sanders hit exactly 2,000. The Silverdome nearly came apart. His teammates lifted him onto their shoulders. Eric Dickerson was in the building to watch it. Sanders handed the football to his father on the sideline. Lions 13, Jets 10. But that same afternoon carried something terrible. Rookie Reggie Brown collapsed on a tackle and lay motionless on the turf for 17 minutes. He needed CPR on the field. In the locker room afterward, the Lions swung between celebrating a milestone and fearing for a teammate's life. One of the greatest days in franchise history and one of the most frightening, the same day, the same game. Sanders finished with 2,053 yards. He was named co-MVP alongside Brett Favre and Offensive Player of the Year. The Lions were 9-7 in the playoffs for the fifth time in 7 years, the best stretch they'd had in decades. And then they went to Tampa, and the magic switched off. The Buccaneers keyed on Sanders and held him to 65 yards. Mitchell left with a concussion. Tampa Bay won its first playoff game since 1979. Detroit, one and done again. Buccaneers 20, Lions 10. The greatest season a Lion ever had ended in a single road afternoon. And the man at the center of it was already, quietly, thinking about walking away. Because here's what almost no one outside his family understood. Coming off the best season of his life, Barry Sanders was miserable. His father, Williams, had Barry called him after that 1997 season, wanting to quit. He was disenchanted with the offense, William remembered. I told him, no, give it a year. So he gave it a year, and the year was a slow-motion collapse. The roster was thinning. Sanders later wrote that management had let good players slip away, that they'd been losing for years, and it wore on him. The quarterback situation was a mess before it even started, and the season opened with a thud in Green Bay. Packers 38, Lions 19. Week 2 made it worse. A home overtime loss to Cincinnati, sealed when Mitchell threw a late interception that came back 53 yards for the winning score. Sanders ran for 185 yards and 3 touchdowns in that game. It didn't matter. Ross had seen enough. He benched Mitchell and handed the offense to a rookie, Charlie Batch, the third quarterback taken in that year's draft, behind Peyton Manning and Ryan Leaf. But the losing didn't stop. A blowout in Minnesota dropped them to 1-3. And then came the day that, in hindsight, may have ended Barry Sanders' career. October 4th, in Chicago. The Lions led 27-10 in the second half, and they lost, 31-27. His father said he had never seen Barry so low. A week later, Sanders told a reporter something that reads now like a warning shot. After a bad loss like that, I go home and I'm ready to quit. I just can't stand it. He said that in October of 1998, with the world still thinking of him as the reigning MVP. The season staggered on. A win over Green Bay, a beating from Minnesota, a 2-point loss to Arizona that fans would remember for a botched Bobby Ross decision. Then a strange little pulse of life, a win over Chicago, a win in Tampa, an overtime win over Pittsburgh on Thanksgiving, even though Sanders was bottled up for just 33 yards that day. For a moment, at 5-7, they were technically alive. But then it all caved in. 4 straight losses to close the year. Jacksonville, San Francisco, Atlanta, and finally, Baltimore. December 27, 1998. A meaningless 19-10 loss in the rain. 19 carries, 41 yards, a rare fumble. It was the last time Barry Sanders ever carried a football in the NFL, and he knew it. He later wrote that he cried on the sideline as the clock ran down because he understood it was over. "I decided," he wrote, "they could go on without me." Ravens 19, Lions 10. Detroit finished 5-11. Sanders still ran for 1,491 yards, fourth in the entire league, and finished, cruelly, 9 yards short of a fifth straight 1,500-yard season. He made his 10th Pro Bowl in 10 years, and then he disappeared. For most of the next 7 months, the Lions could not reach their own best player. No holdout drama, no public demand, just silence. Then, on the eve of training camp, in late July 1999, Barry Sanders sent a fax. Not to the Lions, to the Wichita Eagle, his hometown newspaper. It was short, and it landed like a bomb. "The reason I am retiring is simple," it read. "My desire to exit the game is greater than my desire to remain in it." He was 31 years old. He was completely healthy, and he was 1,457 yards short of Walter Payton's all-time rushing record, a record most people believed he'd break in a single season if he simply showed up. The team found out on a conference call with his agents. They reportedly had to pull his retirement statement off the internet. Barry Sanders, meanwhile, had already boarded a flight to London to escape the fallout. And the question everyone asked, the question Lions fans still argue about, was why. Some pointed straight at Bobby Ross, the disciplinarian who took the fun out of the game for a man who was close to the coach he replaced. Ross denied it flatly. "Do I think Barry left because of me? No, I don't." And Sanders, in his own book, backed him up. He praised Ross and put the blame instead on a front office he no longer believed wanted to win. Both things are on the record. Neither one fully closes the case. What isn't in dispute is what he left behind. A training camp with no Barry Sanders. A franchise that had just lost the greatest player it ever had, at the height of his powers, with no warning at all. And a fan base that would spend the next 20 years wondering what might have been. The peak and the end, 1 year apart. Thank you for watching, and if you want to know what happened to the Lions after Barry, I think you'll like this one too.